Project Binky in colour. Starring Nick Blackhurst. Also starring Richard Brunning. And Rex Hamilton as Abraham Lincoln.
Tonight's episode, The Guilty Alibi. Coming up in episode 22, Nick's still life art classes really begin to pay off. I completely lose my rag. And after the recent snow in Shropshire, we invent a new alpine racing event. At the end of the previous episode, we'd whipped up a new centre console, fitted a dash and trim panels, made some door cards for the front and for the rear, and stalled while trying to fit some new speakers. We were told not to worry because Nick had a plan. You may be surprised to learn that the first part of this plan does not involve the grinder. No, it involves removing the seats.
The only way to get 6x9 speakers into a Mini easily is to sink them into the rear parcel shelf. And unfortunately, we decided a long time ago that fuel capacity was much more important. I suppose we could box them up and sit them on top of the parcel shelf at a slightly jaunty angle, but it's already a really small rear screen and I think they'd take up too much of it. I also think it would look a bit crap. One method people have successfully used in the past to get bigger speakers in here is to make a kick panel that sits level with the front of the rear seat. We've actually got enough height and width to do this, and unfortunately we don't have enough depth because the speaker cone interferes with the end of the chassis rail. Even if we could manage to squeeze them in there, I'm not sure it would be any good because of the proximity of the front seats. So that just leaves the only available space in the rear being the top of the companion boxes, which of course aren't big enough. But they are modifiable. I'm just still not sure whether or not it's worth the arse for 6x9 speakers.
Oh, they've been around for ages. They're not hurting anyone. The plan is to modify the companion boxes to accept the oval speaker. It's staggeringly unlikely for us to take anyone in the back seat, more's the pity, so stealing some space and encroaching on the seat area won't be a problem. We use the level to indicate the vertical cut line. Then measure back to the second cut line before employing the level once more. I've not graduated to use the red pen yet. I'm still only allowed blue ink, or maybe green if it's a particularly special part. With the section to be removed marked out, the grinder makes its first appearance of the show, and it takes no time at all to cut out the offending piece. What we need now is a panel to replace the one we just threw away. Only this one is a bit longer, and it'll have a curve in it that follows the outside shape of the speaker. Nick expertly forms the curve around a carefully chosen mandrel. Then, after punching some holes in the return flanges, the new section is migged into place on the car. The extent of the bulge is easier to see in this view. The speaker is going to sit on a cover plate that will completely enclose the companion box, so we need some brackets to mount the plate on. These are simple little standoff brackets marked out, drilled, parted on the bandsaw and then bent up. Finally, they get welded on. We need some similar brackets for the opposite side of the box, but these have to be made out of aluminium, as they will be mounted on the trim panel door card thing. I don't know what you call it, to be honest. With the brackets fixed, we can now move on to the cover plate. The speaker shape is roughed out with the grinder first, Then the angry end smooths out the shape a bit more before being finished with the cylindrical flappy wheel. Wonder if we could have used a few more abrasive wheels on that maybe. Anyway, now we can drill the speaker mounting holes and then the holes for the trim clip slots. The cover panel needs a return on the outside edge, so some alley is marked up and then it's sliced on the bandsaw. The return strip is then tigged onto the main cover plate. Finally, various tools are employed to flat the welds back and finish the job nicely. The Mini's seatbelt inertia reel sits inside the companion box, so a slot is cut in the cover plate so we can pass the belt through it. So that's the cover plate and mounts complete. Now we can fit it and see how it looks. Not too shabby.
Okay, truthfully, that was way too much work for a pair of speakers, but I get it's just the latest example of me forgetting how small a Mini actually is until I come to fit some normal size components to it. Still, it's done now, it looks pretty good I think. So we can park that and move on to our next problem, which is of course trying to fit some speakers. Yep, that was only half the task. Now we've got some decent speakers in the back, we need something complementary in the front. And while we've got enough girth at the speaker grill, what we haven't got is enough depth for a decent sized speaker before it hits the window in the down position. I would really like to be able to open the windows all the way down, so we've got to find a way to get bigger speakers in here. That's not the only thing that's been going on, you may have noticed. So, while I try and get me noodle around this, it's over to Richard with a wiring update.
Yes, while Nick's been cocking around overcomplicating his speaker mounts, I've been getting on with the important stuff. I've run the rest of the wiring destined for the boot from the fuse box, down the side of the tunnel, up under the seat, and then across to the driver's side before passing it up the channel in the chassis leg and then out into the boot. The wires were then cable tied to the little tags to tidy them up. I reinstalled the wiper motor and the central locking solenoid and cut all the wires to length before adding new terminals to the original plugs and the wiper relay. This section of loom went into an 8 feet long extension piece in the MG, but happily I've managed to junk the entire thing so all these wires are one piece from the component back to the fuse box connector. Happy days. The last thing I need to do to sort this side is fix the boot light and the boot light switch. And for that, I'm going to need a bracket. Do not adjust your sets. Yes, this is me making a bracket. Nick was far too distracted wrestling with the front speaker conundrum to notice me sneaking into the machine shop armed with a pair of digital verniers, a rule, a pen and a hammer. After the obligatory marking out, a 4mm and 12mm hole are drilled into my little angle bracket. Then it's over to the TIG to weld on an M4 captive nut to the back. The corners are then sanded off to follow the lozenge shape of the switch. Sweet! Always want to look for a nicely framed shot of some welding. Here I couldn't have got it more wrong, but it's a nice view of the back of my head. God, I'm going grey. Talking of grey, some edge primer finishes off the bracket. I've connected it all up and temporarily hung the light off the wiper motor. There's a trim panel going in here which will house the light properly. Let's see if it works.
It works!
On the other side of the car, we've replaced the fuel pump feed wire, that's the big white one, with something considerably less weedy, as our fuel system will be drawing a lot more than the little 1400K series in the MG. It's got a dedicated earth wire, and I've run up the fuel level sender feed and the earth to the tank. We wrestled our fuel tank back in and hooked all the wiring up to make sure everything is tickety-boo. Well, with the fuel pump and the sender wired up, that is all of the wiring in the boot complete. And while I've been doing that, I think Nick's worked out a way of fitting the front speakers, and I'm guessing it involves an angle grinder. Well, this is a turn up for the plus 4s. Nick has chosen the angry end for the partial destruction of the micro door pocket. The slightly odd shape of the speaker cover is no good, as it doesn't match the round speaker we're putting in. And if you look closely, you'll see the red outline of a circle that is the pattern to which he's cutting it out to. Now we've got a big hole, before we can move on, we've got to trim it back to the line. There, that looks a bit better.
This is a plastic adapter meant for putting aftermarket speakers into various Volkswagen Audis, and with a small tweak, it should be perfect for this job as well.
That tweak being lopping off the big flange with the bandsaw. I said flange. After the flange is removed, the ring then gets roughed up. And no, that's not a euphemism. The door pocket is now pressed over the plastic spacer. The ring is a tight fit, but it'll need more than some friction to keep it in position. These screws are not for holding it together, they're to make sure it's dead square to the bottom of the door card. We can't have the speaker on the piss, can we? A hot glue gun is now deployed to bond the two parts together, both on the outside seam and along the inside one to get a really good fixing.
I'm not really sure if this hot snot glue is going to be strong enough long term for the job, and it leaves us with quite a sharp transition here, which is going to be a bit of a pain in the arse come trim time. Happily, I think we found the answer to both issues with some 2-part epoxy putty.
This stuff is brilliant. There's a multitude of uses for it. Once it's gone off, you can even drill and tap it, machine it, build bridges out of it, almost anything. Your imagination is the limit. Here, we're going to use it to smooth the transition between the plastic ring and the door pocket. Keeping it wet stops the material from tearing when you're trying to smooth it out. And if you take your time, you can achieve some really good results with it. There'll be some thin foam and trim material over this, and I reckon it'll look mint. Now all we have to do is screw the speaker to the mount.
Well, that's the speaker taken care of, but there's still a tweeter and a crossover to sort out. Now, unfortunately, we've got nowhere to put these where we can get at them to connect them up after the door card goes on the door. So the plan is to completely pre-wire the entire thing and leave ourselves with just one extension plug that we can get to after the door's together.
To keep the wiring out of the way and tidy, the ribs in the channel at the bottom of the pocket get drilled to pass the cabling through. Nick's fat fingers are too big to get into that channel, so a long-nosed pliers make the job easy. It's all very well having all these lovely speakers, but we've got no stereo to wire them to.
And that's because we've got a bit of an issue. As some of you have already noticed, we can't actually fit a normal size head unit in there because some bell end has put the bulkhead far too close to the back of the dash. Now that didn't worry me in the slightest, because for the last few years you've been able to get a mechless head unit which is a lot less deep. Unfortunately, it's still too deep to fit in the hole. So I came up with a whole new plan which involved two very expensive radios.
Then I came up with a better plan that didn't. It seemed crazy to me to buy two stereos to chop one up for parts when I figured we could probably buy the bits we needed to do the job. So I tripped down to Alpine UK Skunk Works to do exactly that. Yep, as you can see, they were game enough to do the whole thing professionally for us and test it for less than the cost of the two stereos. So what we've got is a standard Alpine DAB radio faceplate, a standard DAB radio head unit chassis. At the front, what they've done is integrate a breakout board onto the original faceplate connector, to which is soldered a 2-meter extension cable. At the end of that extension is a bespoke circuit board which has the female part of the face-off connector attached to it. That connector clips into the back of this fascia, which is the original one from the head unit. We've modified a mounting cage so we can fit it to the car, but also so we can take it in and out when necessary. Well, that's all sorted. What we need now is a bracket to mount it to the car. Funk, anyone? Time for a well-earned cuppa. And a hobnob. Or 4. Sweet honey barbecue, that is a nice bracket. That's such a nice bracket, it seems a shame to use it just for the radio. So it's time to introduce you to the ECU. For reasons of space, we can't use the myriad components that make up the Celica engine management system, so we've been forced to go standalone. This Link Fury is far more ECU than we'd ever need, but it does throw up some interesting possibilities. We'll wire it up at a later date, but for now all we need to do is mount it. Link have been fantastic, supporting us since the very beginning, plus we sell them, so it was a no-brainer to fit one of these.
With the radio fixed in place, we can now wire it up, and that's actually dead easy, because on the MG-ZR, the instruments and the radio are on their own separate loom.
This should be the very definition of plug and play. It doesn't get any easier than this. Woohoo! Now we get to play some banging tunes.
We're not playing anything until we can do it through a full complement of speakers, and to achieve that, we need to extend this driver's door harness.
Again, we managed to source the correct colour and gauge of wire for this job. You might think it's crazy to go to these lengths, but troubleshooting is a shed load easier, as the wiring diagrams in the Haynes manual for the MG stay relevant. The idea here is to join the wires with a butt connector and then heat shrink over the top. We'll stagger the joins to avoid a big clump in the loom. This isn't just the speaker wires being extended, it's the electric window and central locking wires too. So now it's routed through under the gear stick in the tray and then across under the steering column in a new alley guide. They won't go behind the dash as there won't be any room there. And those wires terminate at a plug by the A-post.
Now what we need to do is modify and install this driver's door loom and then get the wires through the A-post to the plug.
Wiring up the door consisted of plugging in the electric window motor, repinning this central locking solenoid, then gathering all the wires together before drilling a sodding great big hole in the A-post. The wires were then pinned into the other half of the new plug inside the cabin. Simples. The passenger side was much the same, only a tick easier, as there are fewer wires and they only needed shortening. Sorted. Now we need to carefully reassemble the door. Carefully! Before finally plugging the speaker connector together. Then the armrest is gently clipped onto the pocket. Now our head unit extension cable can be routed up to the dash. I mean, you might question the amount of effort going in here for the tunes, but we're not really going for a full spec ICE system like Moog's orange front-wheel drive Evo. No, we just fancied a nice system that allowed us to feel Duff McKagan's bass guitar and revel in SRV's glorious solos. With the connector clipped into the back, the fascia is then screwed onto the bracket and then the face can go on to complete the install. It's all in now, so tune in next time to see us wrestle with some issues under the bonnet that we've been putting off. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time for another exciting episode from the files of Project Binky.